Lewis Hamilton's strategy gamble and subsequent charge to catch and pass Max Verstappen in the Hungarian Grand Prix evoked memories of Michael Schumacher's famous win at the Hungaroring in 1998. Two of the greatest of all time, pushing flat out in response to a roll of the dice from the pit wall and ultimately making it work. But which was better? Let's take a look. Hamilton's race is fresh in our minds. After 48 laps of chasing and hassling Verstappen, he was running out of options. Verstappen showed little sign of cracking, having held his own whenever Hamilton launched an attack, but the Mercedes charge to close the gap from 4.9 seconds to 0.8 in just 2 laps after the pit stops offered a glimpse at how much pace Hamilton had up his sleeve. Their head-to-head fight had taken them 40 seconds clear of the rest of the pack, leaving plenty of room for an extra pit stop. Mercedes decided to take that chance, pitting Hamilton for a second time for a fresh set of tyres. 21 years earlier, Schumacher found himself stuck behind the McLarens of Mika, Hakkinen and David Coulthard, with the Ferrari pit wall looking for a way to get him some clear track to unleash his true pace. This was back in the refuelling era of F1, so Ferrari decided to put him on a 3-stop strategy in the hope that at some point later in the race he would be out of sync with the McLarens and could build a gap to make his extra stop and still rejoin in the lead. The bare numbers for Schumacher were simple. Once he made his second of 3 planned stops, he needed to build a lead of 25 seconds over 19 laps. If he could do that, he would rejoin ahead of the 2-stopping Hakkinen and just have to bring it home. Hamilton's story was a little more complicated. In basic terms, he rejoined from his extra stop 21 seconds behind Verstappen with 21 laps remaining. However, not only would he have to close that gap, he would then have to pass the Red Bull on track, something Schumacher didn't have to deal with. But Hamilton's real challenge was to nail his outlap, bringing the gap down enough to prevent Verstappen being able to pit a lap later and still rejoin ahead, and Mercedes stressed this point on the radio immediately. As we heard on the TV coverage, Hamilton had his doubts. He was happy with the tyres he was on before he was called in and seemed confident he could find a way past Verstappen in a straight fight. In the first couple of laps after his stop, he continued to question the decision, stating he wasn't sure it was the right move and even suggesting at one point it might have been a bad call from the team. Unfortunately, back in 1998 we weren't privy to such radio chatter, and at the time all we were told was that Schumacher's response to the call from Ross Brawn was to say, OK. However, after the race, even Schumacher admitted he had some doubts. He rejoined from his first stop, still stuck behind the second McLaren of Coulthard, and also Jacques Villeneuve's Williams, which he spent 6 laps behind before the Canadian was called into the pits. Schumacher needed a lead of 25 seconds, and by the time he pitted for his extra stop, he was 27 clear. Some problems for the McLaren drivers, which we'll come to in our final category, helped here, and also allowed Schumacher to rejoin 5 seconds clear rather than the much tighter margin Ferrari would have been predicting. Hamilton gave Mercedes the critical outlap its strategy required, meaning a reactive stop from Red Bull was immediately eliminated as an option. Having pitted on lap 48, by the end of lap 66 he was tucked underneath the rear wing of Verstappen, poised to complete the pass for the lead at turn 1, so the 21 seconds were wiped out in just 17 laps. You can't compare these two great drives without assessing what they were up against. The argument against Hamilton's drive is that he had to catch a sitting duck, or should that be bull, on tyres that had nothing left. But that's why Hamilton's outlap was so important, because it snookered Verstappen into trying to win the race on those tyres, so Hamilton earned that advantage through his own efforts straight out of the pits. Shortly after McLaren's attempt to pit Coulthard for a second time to cover Schumacher, which failed this time, Hakkinen's race-leading car developed a handling problem. McLaren was slow to react to this, with Hakkinen holding Coulthard up for 5 laps as Schumacher streaked away in the lead. As McLaren finally made the switch, Schumacher handed Coulthard a gift by going off at the final corner, giving up 2 of the 5 seconds he'd gained while Hakkinen was in Coulthard's way. But once released, Coulthard couldn't respond to Schumacher's pace. He was heavy on fuel, having taken on enough to get him to the end at his second stop, and his car was also imbalanced due to an incorrect tyre pressure. By this point, Schumacher was in the clear. That's the story behind 2 of Formula 1's greatest drives, but which one do you think was better? Let us know in the comments below, and and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.